imagine that it is. Or probably somewhere in 1988. That's when the studios decided that what the world needed was a slew of underwater movies with aliens and monsters. Hi, I'm Dave Watkins, and today we're going to look at these 3 movies that take place on underwater deep sea stations like The Abyss, Leviathan, and DeepStar Six. Now, there were a couple other movies released in 1989 that took place underwater, like The Lords of the Deep, that was put out by Roger Corman, and The Evil Below. Some of these movies, here's some common elements. Now, not all of these movies have them, but I find that a few funny things, like several of them, 2 of them involve hurricanes. All 3 of them have to deal with decompression. When you're under water really deep, you have to decompress before coming up, or I guess your head might explode, or as it does in one of these movies. They all deal with underwater, with deep sea stations that are underwater. Mini submarines. Only 2 of them have mini submarines, diving suits, and then 2 of them have missiles in them, or nuclear warheads. Now, this one came out first in January 13th, 1989. DeepStar Six. And I remember the trailer. It was like, I remember the trailer was a really short trailer. It didn't show a whole lot. Then at the end, it was like, coming soon, DeepStar Six. And I was like, that looks pretty cool. I want to see that. And it does add this question though. You know, the title sounds cool, but at the same time, it makes you ask: is there more than one? Because DeepStar Six is the name of the station in the movie, but it could, as a viewer, and you're seeing it on TV, you're thinking, is this the 6th Deep Star movie? Another thing, it's called Deep Star, because of aliens. It makes you think, okay, Deep Star instead of like deep water. It makes you think maybe it takes place in space, but it does have the diver suit on the front cover with the guy eaten in half. That happens in the movie. The first time I saw this, my aunt had a VHS copy of it, and we were over at their house. I think my brother and I, and then we watched it on the TV. And this is probably one of the first R-rated movies I'd ever seen. There may have been a few others before this one, but it was one of the earlier ones. It's not really a hard R movie. It's got some gore violence in it and some monster stuff, and the F-bombs dropped a pretty good amount, and probably the F-bombs enough in it to make it rated R. I think it might have been more than 2, and then boom, you got an R-rated movie. But they probably had to hold back on some of the special effects here in this movie, because at the time the censors probably would have rated it harder, like an X or whatever, NC-17. This movie cost about $8 million to make. It didn't do well at the box office. It was considered a bomb, unfortunately. I have a soft spot for this movie. Probably nostalgia, but despite its shortcomings, it does have a lot going for it. The look of it, in comparison, to the other 2, there is a kind of the station itself. It looks darker in there. It seems like they threw some fog machine in there. They're trying to make it look dark in some areas before, but later on, when the shit hits the fan, it looks a lot different as far as the dripping water, and it looks darker, of course. But even earlier on, though, you do see it trying to look a little edgy. Not as edgy as the writers on the commentary track would have liked for it to have looked, but it definitely looks a little more edgy than Leviathan does. A little bit of trivia about this movie. About 20 years ago, I was working on a horror movie called Hell's End as assistant director, and I met Toby Sells, who worked on the special effects team of this movie. And it was cool to meet someone who had worked on a movie I had seen as a teenager. And Toby's hilarious. He's an awesome guy. I hadn't seen him in a while. I miss him, but he was a lot of fun to work with. So this Blu-ray was put out by KL Studio Classic, or Kino Lorber. There's also some work done by Studio Canal. Studio Canal will a lot of times do restorations on movies. I don't think there was restoration done for this movie specifically, but it looks good. I think it's taken from an old master, but it looks good, especially the interior stuff and even the outside and the underwater stuff. Close-ups look really good, but there is something going on with the wider shots when you see the deep sea station, or even when you see a mini sub going through the water, or anything that's kind of moving sometimes in the water. It looks like it's animated in there or superimposed some weird way. It just looks really, it looks weird, and the sometimes that, like, the really wider shots look intentionally soft focus. Maybe they didn't have a very good model for the station, so they're like, okay, what we'll do is we'll just make this thing out of focus, and nobody will be able to tell this thing looks like shit. Or maybe if it was upscaled to 4K, which if they did a proper 2K or 4K master of this, maybe all that stuff would look a lot better. I think you'd see an uptick in quality in general, even though it already looks pretty good in the close-ups and in the interior stuff. It looks good, but I think you'd see more detail in some of the scenes that might help pull some of it together. Also, hey, let me show you this. So this is the original artwork poster that, I think I really like the simplistic design of this thing. But then here's a new one they did for this release. That's pretty cool. You see the sea monster and one of the mini subs there. So, and that looks pretty cool too. And it's nice that they do have a reversible. If you really hated that to a hardcore extent, you could even flip this around, and they've got the diving suit, on the inside, where you could flip it around and wouldn't have to see this cover if you really hated it. But I do have the slip box. I'll just slip it over it. I don't know. I kind of dig this too, though. As far as the cast of this movie, I don't recognize a lot of them from other stuff, or if I have seen them, they're not bigger stars as in some of the other movies, with the exception of Miguel Ferrer, played Albert Rosenfeld in Twin Peaks, which is a friggin' fantastic character. And he was also in RoboCop. The actors that played Ferris Bueller's moms in this, and Matt McCoy, who was in one of the Police Academy movies, I think Police Academy 6, but he's recognizable. And he's the one that ends up in the diving suit from this cover and gets eaten in half. I do like the casting. I like the lead actor and the lead actress, Nancy Everhart. I think that they have great chemistry together, and I'm surprised they didn't go on to be like. I know they've continued to work. Now, I'm not saying that they have. I mean, that's awesome. They continue to work, but I'm surprised that they didn't go on to be like bigger stars. But I like the cast and just the ensemble nature of this. It's very. I think they work well together, and everyone seemed genuine. They seemed to get their parts in it. So this movie is about a prehistoric sea monster that's unleashed so this team's job is to put these missiles on the ocean floor for the Navy for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why, but they're putting some missiles down there. In order to put them down, there's a cave they discover under it, so they have to blow the cave up to put the missiles down. But when they blow the cave up, they release this monster here. It's this prehistoric monster. It comes out and attacks one of the mini subs, and they all get back to the ship, and he eventually is able to get onto the ship, and then they have to fight him on the ship. As far as the monsters look, it looks kind of cool when you don't see it too much. Now later in the movie, it starts showing it more and more often, and the more you see it, the less convincing it is. When I was younger, I didn't mind it as much, looking like a little fakey. It didn't bother me. It's still not really bothering me. I don't give a shit. I mean, it looks like a fake monster or whatever, but it kind of looks, to me at the time, I thought it looked a lot like the Rancor monster from Return of the Jedi. The writers of this movie think that it looks like, which is a newer movie, the monsters from the Quiet Place. It kind of reminds me of the Demogorgon on Stranger Things as well. Number one, the hurricanes. There are no hurricanes in this movie. There's no threat of hurricane or anything like that. So they missed out on that plot point. Decompression. Decompression plays a major role in this movie. It is a huge MacGuffin in this movie that drives most of the action. They have to go back outside of the ship because the decompression lines get messed up. So when Matt McCoy's character goes out in the suit to fix the decompression lines, that's when the monster attacks him, and then they pull him up, and the monster bites him in half. And then from there, the monster gets on the ship, and then they all run, but then they have to go back again to fix the decompression lines. Now, if they didn't have to fix them, they could have gotten away in the pods, but the pods can't decompress without fixing the lines. So it becomes a major thing. Now, eventually, Miguel Ferrer's character gets into one of these decompression pods. He freaks out, gets in there, and just goes without decompressing. And as he's going up, you see all this blood coming out of his nose, and and he starts getting all bloody looking. Now, the writers say his head was supposed to explode when he got up to the top. It's supposed to come all the way out of the water, and then his head explodes, and you see the outside of it. And the director on the commentary, it's funny because I was kind of flipping back and forth between the two commentaries on here. The director was looking at what was on screen, and he's just like, yeah, we went a little over the top of this. And then the writers were like, they're supposed to make his head explode, and it didn't happen. So it's just funny, the two different points of views. Underwater stations, it's in all three of these movies. Submarines, mini submarines, you got them. They don't look very good in this one. He does have the diver suit for the diver suit. The missiles, the missiles are here in this one, and they are. And that's actually what makes the station get messed up to begin with. Like, Miguel Ferrer's character messes up a bunch of stuff. He accidentally detonates the missiles, and it causes a lot of damage to the outside of the station, which messes up the decompression lines to begin with. So anyway, so DeepStar Six, I think it's a fun movie. I like the movie. It has some shortcomings to it. It's not as good as the other ones. It had a lot lower budget. This one had $8 million. Leviathan had a $21 million. So they had half the budget of the next one after this, which is Leviathan. Leviathan, also put out by KL Studio Classics. This one is in 4K. It's got this one's in 4K, and it looks a lot better than DeepStar 6 as far as the sharpness of when you see people's faces, and even like the water shots look a lot better. The underwater photography in this movie is gorgeous. When you see the water shots, everything is in focus. It doesn't look animated. They had a lot higher budget than DeepStar 6 in this one, so which I was saying it had $21 million. This one came out in March. DeepStar 6 came out in January, so it was like, we're starting the year with this, and that didn't work out too good. We're going to go to this. This one it bombed as well. It made $19 million. It came so close to doing something, but it didn't quite make it as far as making money. This one and DeepStar 6, they had a very good life on cable. That's where I first saw this one, was I believe on HBO or something like that. And so they probably made their money. They probably made money on cable because it was on all the time. This one, instead of having a prehistoric sea monster, what we get is the characters are infected by an experiment from this Russian vodka that turns them into sea monsters, but not prehistoric. But their bodies, kills them, and then their bodies start to grow sea monster parts. And then it's kind of and then I don't know if they're actually dead, because later on it kind of looks like the thing, they start mutating together, and then sometimes their heads will talk, saying like, "Please kill me," or whatever. But they find this Russian ship out near where their base is, and they find this Russian ship that has a hole blown in the side of it. But they find this trunk inside that has a bunch of information, including this vodka that one of the characters, played by Daniel Stern, takes the vodka and he drinks it, and one of the other women drink it, and so they both become infected first, and then and then it becomes an alien on a ship, or the thing on an underwater ship sort of scenario, which it works pretty good here. I think it's fairly suspenseful in certain parts of it, to me anyway. Even though you kind of know what's going to happen, but at the same time you do feel the suspense. This one is more well lit on the ship. It looks like a nicer, maybe it's an upgraded deep sea water station. It looks like a nicer one than the one in DeepStar Six. Now this one has a really cool cast. Peter Weller plays the guy in charge from RoboCop. It kind of gives you a RoboCop connection to this one and Deep Star 6. Unfortunately, that doesn't continue into the Abyss. That'd been cool if it did. But he plays the guy who's in charge, and he's having a hard time keeping control of the ship's doctor, played by Richard Crenna from Rambo and all that. And he's having a hard time with that. And so there's a little bit of drama, internal drama, but they kind of worked that out earlier on. But it's a good introduction to the characters, and you see that he seems to be a pretty good leader, but he kind of keeps himself separated from the crew, which is something you have to do when you're in charge, which is an annoying thing, because if you try to be too buddy with them, it just doesn't work out too good, unfortunately. But I do like Peter Weller's performance in this. It is very, it is a very understated performance, but I do like him, and Richard Crenna brings a lot to it too, as the doctor who has gone. He's kind of been in trouble. That's how he ended up in this situation, and he's kind of depressed, even though he doesn't stay in that state for long. He becomes interested in what's going on with this contagion, and he eventually makes the decision that they need to destroy it and destroy the station instead of letting it get out, which is everyone hates that decision in the movie, obviously, because they all want to live, but it is a kind of a responsible decision in a way, because if he destroys the ship, then this thing doesn't get out, and it could cause this thing, it's kind of like the thing, so it could cause a lot of problems. It could maybe even end the world, maybe, but it doesn't. This movie also has Ernie Hudson in it, and he makes it almost to the end, and it's really ridiculous that his character doesn't make it out, because he's very likable, like he usually is in this part, and he gets out with Peter Weller and the main actress. She's an English actress, Amanda Pays, and I really like what she did in this movie. What she did with the character. Her character is also kind of trying to stay. She's not really wanting to buddy with everyone else on the ship. Daniel Stern's character might be considered problematic by today's audiences, and I hate that word problematic. It's so stupid, but he is he's kind of hitting on the women in the station, and inappropriately. They kind of take it as, they shrug it off like, oh, that guy's doing that again. He does, like, I think he smacks him on the butt or whatever. He does that, and they kind of, I guess. They kind of treat it like it's a grain of salt, and he's just kind of doing his thing. But they do kind of, like, one of them they put like a sea, looks like a big ugly crab thing in his bed to, like, mess with him. So they kind of get him back for being like, they seem like some of them kind of like it anyway, but that's the way it may, that might not fly, and if it was written now, but here, and his character does die. He's the one that dies first. I like Daniel Stern, and he's kind of funny in this part, but it is kind of treated in a way that it probably wouldn't be written that way now. This movie is rated R. It has some gruesome looking stuff, kind of, some gory monster stuff going on, and, but as far as, like, it seems like it could have gone a lot more extreme than what it does. It almost seems like it cuts before it gets ridiculous. To me, the cast is the strongest thing in this movie, but it also looks very good, and it especially looks very good in 4K, and it does get very suspenseful further into it. Let's take a look at my list of things for this movie. Hurricane. There is a mention of a hurricane in this one, but there is no hurricane, and that is once they're able to talk to the people up top, but they're talking to this lady. And she says they can't come up yet because there's a hurricane, but she's lying because she's wanting to keep them down there and not let this contagion get out. So that's your hurricane. Decompression. So at the end, this is actually from the end of the movie. It's on the cover. The end of the movie is on the cover. So they escape with the in these suits. Well, she has a suit on. I'm not sure why she's like that on the cover, but they wanted to be sexualized a little bit. So they escape, and as they're going up, their suits, decompression. Their suits decompress as they're going up. It's fairly convenient. Submarines. This one does not have submarines, but they are able to walk around in these suits. That's how they find the ship. They're walking. Daniel Stern's character's walking around in the suit, and he falls off this small cliff and finds the ship. There's talk about the water looking murky and not being able to see, which you can't see in DeepStar Six, but in this one you can see it pretty good on film. It doesn't look murky when they're walking through it, but it is because they say it is. As far as missiles, they missed it on this one, and I added a RoboCop actor to this one, so that it gets that. The Abyss doesn't have any RoboCop actors in it. Who it does have is Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and Michael Biehn. This was directed by James Cameron, and he recently put out 3 movies that were digitally remastered in 4K. There's some AI used from what I've read. They say like True Lies and Aliens are the other two. They say True Lies has probably got the worst version of this, where they're really cleaning everything up. But I've read some people say they really like it. It looks good to them. Other people say it doesn't look like the way that it did back when they saw it. I also must mention like this cover. So you got kind of the floating heads and then the mini sub in the middle. Some people don't like it. When I first saw this, my first impression was that looks pretty cool. But then I saw a lot of people complaining about it. I guess it is kind of but I do like the way that it has all the 3 main characters on the front of it. Now, this movie had the biggest budget out of all 3 of these movies. It was $47 million in 1989. And this is the only one of the 3 that made money and made $90 million. And it won an Oscar for Best Visual Design. And this movie, James Cameron is like you've seen his other movies like Titanic and Avatar. So he does very impressive work. Everything looks amazing here. And there's a lot of, unlike some of the other movies that are kind of grounded in this horror thing, this one's more science fiction. He downplays it, and he uses a lot of science, like real science, for what you see on screen. There is a liquid that's based on a real liquid. I don't think they use it on humans. They've tested it on mice, but so they're able to put this pink liquid in their diving suits, and they're able to breathe. That makes them being able to breathe underwater, I guess indefinitely, unless they go too far down, which they eventually do in the movie. The cast is excellent in this, and they had a really shitty time apparently making this movie. And none of them have worked with James Cameron since, as far as the main cast here. But Ed Harris won't talk about it. He almost drowned a couple of times when they were shooting the movie, and so it's almost like a trauma thing for them. But their performances here, they're amazing. Hopefully one day he'll be able to watch it. He probably won't without having the trauma. But I know sometimes actors can kind of look at something and see what a phenomenal thing that they did. They were under a lot of stress here. So in this one, instead of having the sea monsters or the thing sea monster, what you have here is some aliens from outer space who they fly in and they collide. A lot of this is seen off screen, but they interfere with a U.S. sub. It ends up getting sunk, and so the station that Ed Harris's character is working on is close to where it happened, and so Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio has to bring Michael Biehn is part of a SEAL team. She has to bring his squad down there so they can go check it out. But when they get there, one of the characters does see an alien and he freaks out, and then they have to get him out of there and get everybody back to the water station, the deep sea station. And from there, Michael Biehn's character, who to begin with, when he first starts to go down there, he's already having, I guess what they call a deep sea, it's some kind of psychosis from being under the water. And they say when your hands start to tremor, that's when you know it's starting to happen. He hides this, and he's getting more and more paranoid as he's down there. So there are missiles on the submarine that he has to retrieve. He's worried about the Russians or whoever coming down and getting them before they can get to him. And so this causes, he ends up stealing one of the mini subs. And then during that, there's a hurricane that's happening up top, and they're not able to close one of the hatches, which ends up making one of these cranes from up above fall down and land on the deep sea station and cause a lot of damage. This movie's plot is fairly complicated. It's fairly complex. Now, it can be more of a slow burn plot. It's not as much straightforward as the other two movies, and it is a very long movie. And there is an extended version that's even longer, but it's very well done, and I think it's more. This one's definitely more. Well, this one's more. Well, it won best visual effects, and it's not as much a horror movie. These aliens end up helping Ed Harris's character later on, but Michael Biehn's character freaks out, and he gets the missiles back, and he tries to shoot it at them, but they're able to stop him. But then Ed Harris's character has to go down to get it wearing the suit, and it's then that the aliens help him. But before that happens, there's a very, very nice scene where he went down and he thinks it's a one-way trip, and he's telling his wife that he loves her, and all this, or his ex-wife. And so it's a very nice scene when that happens. As far as, let's look at my list of stuff on this. Hurricane, yes. Now this one shows the hurricane. They have enough budget to show a hurricane and knock the crane down and all this, and it looks really good in this. Everything in this one it looks amazing. The only thing I think it might be a little drawn out with the story, but I really love this movie anyway. I've seen it several times, and I didn't mention the fort. It is beautiful what they've done here. This restoration, and I highly recommend this. And I've seen a lot of talk about it being of the aliens and True Lies being the more acceptable of the three as far as what James Cameron did. But James Cameron knows his shit with this technology, and he really makes this look better than it's ever looked. I saw it on Laserdisc a long time ago when I was in film school, and teacher showed it to us, and it looked really good then. But when I saw it here, it looks like you can just see so much detail, and it looks fantastic. And you also have, of course, you have an underwater station. It's in all three of these submarines. You got them. They look friggin' fantastic. You believe it every time you see them on screen. Another thing too, I didn't mention the characters. Not the main characters, but like all the supporting characters. I hadn't seen most of them in other than Chris Elliott, who plays one of the guys up top. But I haven't seen a lot of them in other stuff. But they all seem very authentic to me. They seem like almost like real people in a way, acting in the movie. But and then missiles. You got missiles in this one, and RoboCop actor you don't have, but. I don't know. I mean, I think I watched all three of these within a day or so, and I really enjoyed watching all three of them again. The one I'd seen the least is Leviathan, but I thought it was strong too. By the way, this one here came out in August 9th in 1989. So you had January, March, and we're like, that didn't work out too good. We better wait till August to bring the one that's going to make money out. But really, I enjoy all three of these movies. It's interesting to see the different times they were released and the different budgets and what they did with them. But hey, thanks for watching. If you have your opinions of the movies in the comments, and if you haven't done so yet, you can subscribe. I got a subscribe button on my page. If you go there, you can just subscribe.